Yes, in some ways.
Welcome back to Senate Education, April 5th, 2:35. And, there she is. How are you, Ms. Schultz?
Good. How are you, Senator?
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We thought last week, and I apologize for the late start. We're just a little bit behind. Last week, we started to go, oh, Ms. Dow, good to see you. Thank you both for joining us. Last week, we saw your letter. We started to go through things, and we just thought it would be easier, as it always is to have the authors and those who are most concerned with what's happening on the ground in to talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing and what your concern is and how we can be helpful. So that's really goes back to the old, what's the problem and how can we help solve it?
Sure. So, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for calling us in. It was a pleasant surprise to get the invite. So thank you so much. And of course, I have my colleague, Judy Dow here as well. And I just want to talk about, first of all, kind of our, connection to this work and, the commitment that we've made to this work over the years, quite frankly. Each of us will kind of go over that and then talk about how we kind of got here in the first place, like how this statement that you got your hands on got there, and then what actions. Is that okay with you? And then obviously some questions. Does that sound like a good format for you?
Yeah, so we have a joint hearing at 2:55, so we can always have you back for additional time. So okay. I would, as much as you can sort of lay out for us the problem that you're seeing right now with the bill that we passed, that would be great.
Okay, so then, so I'm gonna skip then our commitment, because y'all know our commitment. You have seen it. Okay, yep. And I'll just go right into what process we went through. So we set an original goal of submitting a complaint to some schools that we identified had some problematic mascots to the Agency of Education. That's how this all started. And we attached the complaint to the record so that you could see that. What we did not know is that the process what would ensue after that. And so since of submitting the complaint to the Agency of Education, we were informed that we needed to file complaints with each individual school district. We were informed also that the school districts were also required to adopt their own policies as of January 31st, or adopt the model policy provided by the AOE. And so this actually left the decisions back into the hands of the school boards and school board members, individuals in the district, and superintendents to make decisions on what they believe is racist and what they believe is discriminatory, and what they believe will make students feel welcome. That there then lies the problem, because it puts the onus of marginalized people like myself and my colleagues with expertise in this area to put out to prove it to people who don't really have the knowledge, right? To prove it to people who don't have the background on how discrimination and those sorts of things exist in our world. So it becomes a very frustrating process. I had years of going through that over in Rutland, Judy as well. Like it becomes really ugly because we're dealing with people who haven't really no understanding of how racism and discrimination shows up, because they don't have firsthand knowledge, number one, and number two, they don't have the expertise regarding the historical implications and present day implications. So that was one of the things that we saw and experienced along the way. And then there was no mandate or accountability within that process by any state agency, including the Agency of Education. So we discovered many things along this journey, and we are just here to uphold the very mission of the law that you all put forth in Act 152, and which is the intent of and I'm quoting, the General Assembly is to ensure that all Vermont schools provide positive and inclusive and learning environments for all schools by eliminating the use of discriminatory school branding. And you can read that for yourself, but we're just trying to uphold those values. Judy will here give a synopsis on the things that we learned in this process specifically.
All right, so before we move to Judy, any questions for Mia? I'm just trying to understand, Ms. Schultz. So when you went to these two schools, you made a formal complaint to the Agency of Education that their mascots were discriminatory.
We actually went to 8 schools. And
Okay. And then went to the Agency of Education and
we started with the Agency of Education.
okay, you started with the Agency of Education. You went to the Agency of Education and filed a complaint that these 8 schools had discriminatory mascots. And then what was their response?
Their response was to go back to the school districts.
Okay,
And then that's what we did.
okay,
And so then we ran into a whole litany of problems and process issues as a result, because it again just perpetuated what was happening before the law was in place.
okay.
Judy, you want to talk about? Okay, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
know, I just want to make sure I've got all this down, because as I recall, so all of the schools and school districts are supposed to adopt an anti-discrimination policy by when? Do you happen to know? I can check with Ledge Council.
As far as I know, January 31st, 2023. And actually, Ms. Dowd and myself actually thought that was the time frame to submit complaints. Yeah. We're pushing to get our complaint out by the 31st, when actually that was when the school district should have had adopted a policy on school branding.
You happen to know, Ms. Schultz, if those schools, when you went back to them, did they say that they had not adopted a policy? Because if they hadn't, then they do have to defer to the state AOE policy. Did they?
Right. Yep, some of them did and some of them didn't.
Okay. Okay.
Some of them hadn't, like Brattleboro, for example, they had not adopted it, and then anything. But however, I believe, like, for example, Orange County, they did.
Okay. Ms. Dow. We can't hear you yet, no.
Okay, yes.
Here we go.
So there were many things we discovered. It first started back in July when I wrote to the Office of, what's it called? The Agency of Education to ask to assist in the creation of the policy. And they defined stakeholders to me as school boards. And after attending the meetings last year to create this branding policy, the law, I was under the impression stakeholders included people who might impact the mascot might impact. So I was rather disappointed that they did a draft and sent it to me and said, here's the draft, it's posted today, let us know any comments. And after I made a comment or 2 or 3, they didn't accept any of them. And so I was not included in the process of making it, except to comment after it was already done. And that was not accepted. So stakeholder issues were the first problem that I had encountered. The second problem is that I had encountered is, like Mia said, some people had policies, some people didn't. And in the policy that they created, in our letter, we asked them to send a copy of the policy. We heard from 2 schools. And then Mia got an email from a 3rd school. So most of the schools did not tell us whether they had a policy or not. And basically we're going on the fact that they had nothing because we hadn't seen in the policy that the fallback was the one the state wrote. Many people didn't even know about the state one.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
So the monitoring was the second thing. There was no monitoring. Nobody was following up after the date of when it was supposed to be in place. We also discovered that we got the addresses off the internet for the school boards as to where to send the letters to. And we discovered that the letters went to superintendents first, who opened the mail before the school board got it. And many times we communicated with a school board member, a superintendent, before they even told the school board or the school board knew anything about it. Like in the case of Randolph, we communicated for weeks with the superintendent about attending a meeting. And we said, no, we were supposed to, according to the policy, file a complaint. We did. Now you investigate it and let us know the results. And they're like, no, you have to come to a meeting. We're planning a meeting. And that particular night, Mia was busy, and I don't particularly care to drive at night because I have the beginnings of cataracts, right? And so under the Freedom of Information Act, a reporter finds that out. He requests all the emails from the superintendent, and they become public knowledge. They come posted in newspapers. So the next thing we learned was that filing a complaint was not going to be easy for any average Joe Blow, because they were expected to give the documentation about why the complaint was there, even though the policy doesn't say it. And they were the ones getting lashed out with the narrative from media that they were creating themselves. Media was creating because we weren't talking to them. And then the next thing we discovered was that, let's see, that there was programs in schools that had a decent mascot, but there was programs in schools in after school programs that didn't. So for instance, and so people were writing to us and saying, why didn't you write about our school? Why didn't you file a complaint about our school? So I'll give you an example. I live in Essex and we are the Hornets, but they have an after school wrestling program that's called the Warriors with a big indigenous headdress on their emblem. So we don't know how that got missed, but we got letters from other independent schools throughout the state saying, why didn't you address this one? We did the best we could, but there's more out there.
Judy, real quick, I just want to clarify the word independent from other just schools, whether they were public or independent, just so we know independent means something different in this space.
Right. So, and then we began to realize that the process was lying on the marginalized communities to prove harm, and that the school boards weren't actually qualified or trained to understand when a mascot was harmful. They had no training in cultural humility. They didn't understand at all, many times, why it might be harmful. And so we, again, in the media, were criticized for being cowards and for not having our history right and all these different things. The hate mail and the harmful and disrespectful mail, and there was, I think, probably close to 20 newspapers, including the Boston Globe, that wrote about it. And it was getting out of hand. Let's see. The policy didn't, in my opinion, it doesn't follow the intent of the law. And I say that because I sat through all those meetings last year. If I didn't sit through them, I watched the film. And the intent of the law for me was to protect all children. And so in our first letter, there's a paragraph near the end that talks about there should be discussions happening around schools who have mascots that promote violence. Because we live in a world where there's a school shooting every day. And I taught at Essex Elementary and lost my best friend that I had co-taught with for 9 years to a shooting. And violence needs to be addressed. And we can't have mascots that are marauders or bullets or Minutemen or Patriots. And people are saying, why are those violent? Well, I work with children every day, and they say things like, Patriots, do you mean like January 6th? Or they say, Minutemen, oh, those are the people that stopped us and brought us to the detention center when we crossed the border. So there's fear around all of those things. So we decided to add that paragraph because kids do not feel safe. And that was the intent of this bill, to have all students feel safe in their school. The other thing is the pathway forward for appeals is like almost non-existent in the policy. They have 45 days, I think it is, to determine whether it's a discriminatory mascot or not, but they don't have to let the complainant know. So we now are in a position where we don't know if we have to appeal because we don't know what the school did. So we're going to have to investigate all of those schools to find out what they did. So the process has big gaps in it that are missing as to what the complainant does and what the school does and what the AOE does.
So I just want to pause there for one moment. We have somebody from the Agency of Education.
Great.
Chelsea, is there, Lindsay, sorry, I apologize. Is there a way that we might, in the coming weeks, have a meeting between the agency, Ms. Dow and Ms. Schultz, just to see if there's, and I'm not saying there is, but any misunderstanding from anybody's side, you know, what these two women are raising, what changes we might need to make. Is that a possibility? Would you be willing to do that? Okay. I'm just thinking, Ms. Dow, Ms. Schultz, it might be the most effective use of everyone's time for the two of you, if you're comfortable, to sit down with the Agency of Education and talk some of these things through, because they are going to know the bill. We have a new committee, and I frankly, we don't have Ledge Counsel here to either confirm or not confirm. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have Ledge Counsel here. Peter, good to see you. All right, Dan back. Good. Peter wrote the article. So we do have Ledge Counsel here, but we also have another meeting that's about to start. It might be helpful for you as a group to sit down and then come back to us with agreed upon recommendations, even recommendations from the two of you that you want to put forward, even if the Agency of Education disagrees. It just might be a good.
I think that would be fine. And that is actually what we've been requesting the whole time, to be concluded as stakeholders in this process.
Okay.
And if the AOE is in agreement in allowing us to be stakeholders in this process, in which we have not been afforded that opportunity in the past, including when informing the policy itself, if we can get the assurance that our commitment as stakeholders is recognized by the AOE, I am good on moving forward with that.
Okay, that's great. So I'm getting an approval from the agency right now. And so what we'll do is I'll ask Hayden Ross, our committee assistant, to put the three of you in contact as a next step. And then in a couple of weeks, given everyone's schedule, come back and report to us areas of agreement, even if there are areas of disagreement. I really cannot thank you enough for taking the time, all three of you, to work on this a little bit outside the building.
Sure.
Okay. Committee, any questions right now for either Ms. Dow or Ms. Schultz? Anything pressing? Yes, please.
No, wait.
Are you sure? Okay. Okay, so please look for an email from Hayden Ross. He's our committee assistant. Thank you both very, very much. This has been helpful in terms of a next step. And we'll look forward to hearing back from everyone. We'll still have plenty of time if everybody comes back in 2 weeks with some kind of suggestion on how to best move forward, because we will likely still have a bill that we could attach some changes to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Great, thanks.